Welcome, everyone, to your Pod Network, live on Twitch. I am your host, Matt Cardona, a.k.a. the $1,000 Broski, the Michael Jordan of Wrestling Collecting. We're all here, guys.
We're all here. We're all here.
But we have a very special guest tonight, Brian Flynn from Super 7. Brian, thank you so much for being on here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said, you guys are all nice and well lit, and I'm in the cave here. Next time I do this, I'll have to get some extra lights and really brush up on my my interview persona.
I like your cave. Great. Yeah, it looks great.
What do we have back there? Are those some collectibles?
There's all sorts of stuff in here. Like I happen to be on the Universal Monsters side mostly at this point. So we've got, let's see, wrong hand here looking in the mirror. So that's all like San Diego from a couple years ago, the die-cut Universal Monsters, some of the Sokies and glassware that's about to come out, the Halloween stuff. Let's see here. There we go. That's the Halloween buckets.
Nice.
I don't think I'd be able to do that.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm trying to do this is counterintuitive to me here. This is like skating goofy. I mean, skating regular. Masters of the Universe, all sorts of other stuff. So
sweet.
There's stuff.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
We got to come over. You got to invite us over to do a nice little tour of your toy room.
This isn't the toy room. This is at the office. This is
this is even cooler.
We'll do a two-parter. We'll do a two-parter.
Yeah, this is where we sit here and dig through all the prototypes and make sure everything looks right.
Oh, very cool.
Well,
stuff to talk about.
Well, hello to all the major marks out there live in Twitch land. Normally I shout out the subs, but I'm going to do that at the end as to not interrupt the conversation. But the guys are going to ask Brian some questions. We're going to open questions up to all of you guys. And we're going to have a great time here post-impact. Sweet. I got a beer. You guys got a beer?
I wish.
I have some water.
Yeah.
I have a lovely glass of water.
My Mets water. All right, Brian. Hot topic this week. Finally, after a long-awaited
17-year wait.
17-year wait. New Japan Series 1 finally dropped from Super 7. A little bit of controversy. We'll get into it.
Yes.
But how did Super 7 and New Japan Pro Wrestling become one to begin with in the very first place? I would love to hear that.
When it started out, I think, as we all know, I mean, wrestling figures are a huge, huge segment of the toy collecting community, right? Everybody we know has collected wrestling figures at one point or another. Everybody we know, it's, you have sort of Star Wars guys, then you have like Transformers guys and G.I. Joe guys and wrestling guys. Those are sort of like your four food groups. Then you can get into all your desserts and appetizers. Like, oh, I only collect Star Trek. Okay, well, you're over there.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah.
Kind of thing. Sure. I would think that turtles is probably another major food group. But, we had all collected wrestling figures over the years. And what we sort of talked about when we were getting into this is, what's an angle on wrestling figures that hasn't been done? First off, you've got to get around sort of the all-encompassing master toy license that Mattel has. So you're not going to go make, I don't know, any of those guys from WWF, it's now WWE, or just WW. You're not going to make any of that stuff. So how do you do something interesting and different? And then secondarily, for Super 7, this is our 20th year. When we started out as a magazine about Japanese toys, and we were making toys and vinyls in Japan. That's where we started with. So as we sort of came into this, one of those things where literally one day we were like, has anybody really actually made NJPW figures, like for real? We're like, I don't think they have. So we reached out and we're like, hey, you guys interested in letting us make figures? And they were like, sure. It was like, we can't sell them to Walmart. We're not going to be able to do that thing, but we want to make some toys. And they were like, sure, let's do it. Kind of like,
wow.
It just hadn't happened yet. And it was sort of surprising. I mean, there's been bits and pieces here and there, but nothing sort of significant.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago at Comic-Con, we were interviewing you for one of our blogs, and you told us about these, and we were like, whoa, because we didn't see this coming. But it was a perfect time because New Japan has been so popular in the United States. It wasn't like, an underground thing. It's so well known. You can go to Hot Topic and buy their T-shirts. It's a well-known thing. So it was a perfect time for their figures to be released domestically. And I was, no pun intended, super excited that you guys were doing it.
Yeah, I think that, we wanted to do it because it was fun and interesting to us. And in generally where we live in a lot of ways, we're getting bigger and bigger licenses, but where we really have spent all of our time with is like, what are the deep cuts? What's the thing you don't have? Like, quite honestly, for both of you guys, it's like you have, thousands of wrestling figures already. Like, how am I going to get you interested in something else that you don't have? Like, that's not just another version of something you already have. Like, how can we do something cool and interesting and different and unique? And that's where we sort of landed with that, which was, we just thought it would be really cool to make NJPW figures. And we didn't know how it was going to go, knowing that I obviously, if all of a sudden we'd be like, oh, here's Kenny Omega, like, yeah, we know that that's going to be a thing, but we also knew that wasn't on the table. So it was like, okay, we were actually trying to see if we could go back to like 70s and 80s guys. And NJPW was sort of like, hey, if we're going to get to make action figures, we want our current guys. So let's start there.
Wow. Okay. So was it like a conglomeration of like, did they give you a list of talent to choose from kind of thing? Or how did it go about like deciphering the series?
We went back and forth. We went to them with sort of an initial wave. We went with an initial wave that we wanted. Then they said, hey, could you come back and do people that are actually wrestling now? Because we want to give it to the fans that we have now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously a great reverence for the older
big time
wrestlers, but as a company, we want to support the people that are in the ring right now. So then we went back with another sort of wave of figures, and then we sort of negotiated back and forth sort of who was going to come out and when. And the same thing, like that, they were very much like Okada's got to be in the first wave, where we might have had him a little later on down the line. And they were like,
That's pretty cool.
I don't think you understand.
Yeah.
We're going to put a cut in the front, and it's not a negative. I don't want that to sound weird. It's just, they're very, very specific in what they want. And then we're trying to do because they're coming from very much their Japanese fan base point of view. And then we're coming from somebody from America and their point of view on who the wrestlers are and what order they should be in. And then just trying to find that middle ground that works.
Okay.
I guess my next question would be, the wrestling figure community, even now, I don't think they're used to this pre-order being the order.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So even when we had our figures come out, we were trying our hardest to pitch the people on the idea. But these New Japans were up for pre-order before that. So can you kind of give us a little summary of what exactly this pre-order system is, and it's how the made-to-order process works? Because I think people still think they're going to find these in Walmart in a couple months. Because if you pre-order something on Ringside Collectibles, it's like, I'll just get it when it shows up at Target. These aren't coming to Target. If you didn't pre-order these, you got to buy them like on eBay because it's over.
Okay, yeah, there's about 3 questions in there, so I'm going to chop it up into pieces.
Do what you got to do, baby.
Okay, so first and foremost, the pre-order model is set up for us sort of as a safety net for both us and the collectors. So making figures like this it sounds silly, but it's difficult to do. And it's time consuming and it's expensive. And if it wasn't, everybody would be making them. You'd be
there you go.
Figures out the wazoo. In as much, and I'm going to digress and come back. When people talk about Target and Walmart, every one of those pegs is $sign for Walmart as well as for Hasbro or Mattel or Jazzwares or Spin Master or whoever. So that peg, like if you're at Walmart, they ship in 8s. When you walk into a Walmart peg, if it's more of a traditional action figure, it's probably a little bit different on wrestling, but it's a peg of 8. That's how everything ships. So when they sell through 4, they can send another pack of 8 in to fill up the peg to 12. Everything is set on 8s. And that peg they sort of have a matrix. Like that peg has to sell X amount of units per month. So let's say, for easy math, because we've been talking about this, it sells 10 wrestling figures a month. And that wrestling figure is sort of the elite level figure at $20. So that means that peg is $200 a month. Now there's 4,000 Walmarts. So that $200 peg times 4,000 Walmarts means that is it that's $800,000, I think, right?
Okay.
So that's $800,000 a month. So that is $9.6 million a year in one peg.
Right.
So if you want to get a peg, you're not going to get a peg because Mattel and Hasbro are fighting tooth and nail for every peg. Because if you're going to do the simple math that says it's $9.6 million at retail and it's 50% off for wholesale, that means that it's $4.8 million in sales for every peg they get. So they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that they never lose a peg. So for a Hasbro or a Mattel or anybody to get a peg at Walmart or at Target is a huge deal. Every peg is fought for. So the fact that you would get a peg is very, very, very difficult. So I circle that back to the pre-order model, which is what happens so much with you guys or anybody else. They're talking about, hey, something's coming out. This new figure is dropping at Walmart. It comes in, 8 go in on a peg. One guy walks in, pulls all 8 of that assortment out of 4 characters, 2 each. He's got them on eBay. Nobody ever saw them. Everybody's pissed off, even though they made 100,000 of them. Can't find these at retail. I got to pay $30.
I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, you know, and you know, but these things are still being made in volume. But granted, there's volumes of fans that want them. So when we're dealing with something deeper cut, you also can't quite take that same risk without reward. So where we go is instead of saying, okay, hey, it's going to drop sometime. Hope you can get to your store and get it. We say, hey, we're going to come out there and it's an open pre-order for a month. Every single person that wants one gets a chance. You can order 1, you can order 50. Everybody that wants one can get one. And at the end of the month, we close the pre-order. This does 2 things. It guarantees us that we know how many we're selling, right? So if I'm going to use an easy number for us, if we sell 5,000 on a pre-order, that means we know those 5,000 sales are solid and good. Obviously, people are paying ahead of time if they're buying from us. Some places they're paying deposits. Some places they're pre-ordering. We can sort all that out, but we know that those 5,000 sales are real. And we know that everybody that wanted one could get one. The catch, though, is that I don't make 6,000, because if I make 6,000 of something that only 5,000 people want, and I got 1,000 sitting here, I can price them at $2 and no one's going to give a shit.
Right.
They're just going to sit.
Right.
And secondarily, the worst thing that can happen for you is if you pay $45 for a figure from me, and then 6 months later it's sitting on the shelf someplace for $25, you're pissed. I know that if you pay $45 for a figure from me, no matter what, it's always going to be worth $45 because every single person that bought it wanted it. They weren't necessarily buying it to flip, because you can't really flip something if everybody has a chance to order it.
Right.
So there's no flipper game in that. Now, the catch-22 comes in is much like Mr. Myers was saying, which is all these guys go, I don't know if I want it. And then they show up. They see it at their friend's house. They see some photos of it. They're like, crap, I want it. The problem inherently then is the only way to get it is to pry it out of somebody else's hands. But the reason, so coming back to supply and demand side of it, you give everybody a chance. So you maximize the amount of people that really want it, but you also sort of kill sort of the instant flippability of it. So you dissuade somebody that might buy 10 of these, hoping that he's going to make $10 each selling them on eBay. Mm-hmm. So you've got a weird catch-22, because then at the end, maybe there are 10%, 20% more people that didn't order it, that want it, that didn't miss out, and now they've got to pay more or not. The reality with the secondary market is there's nothing I can do to move that secondary market. Either that figure is rare because more people want it than bought it originally, or it's not. No amount of production numbers or special fancy packaging is going to change that. The only thing that matters is, do more people want it than what was made? And that's it. So I can't make my figures rare. Like if I make all that and sell them to order and everybody hates them, they're not going to be rare. No one's going to care. And so I think I've even detoured myself off this question because I knew I was breaking it up in pieces.
Interesting stuff.
But going backwards is I also am making product that I know that I can never sell volume of. All these guys are like, oh, if you put that on shelf at Walmart, you'd sell 1 million of those. So it's like, well, yeah, but I'm also going to have Walmart Mattel and Hasbro incentivizing Walmart, doing everything to make sure that peg does not happen. They're not going to give up a peg. That's how those companies make billions of dollars a year. That's not who we are. So inasmuch, if I had the visibility of being on shelf at Walmart, I probably could sell 10x what I'm selling, because people would just walk into the store and be like, oh my God, I had no idea they made Okada. I need Okada.
Right.
Give me that. That's rad.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get that option. So then all my mechanics, all my pricing, which a lot of people don't like, is based on the fact that I'm not going to sell what they sell. So I have to amortize all my tooling costs, all my development costs, all my manufacturing over 1/10 the amount of figures, 1/20th the amount of figures that they're making. So then my cost per unit is that much higher.
Of course.
Mark was saying this on the podcast this week. Mark, I'll let you explain it about those keychains. Like, explain that analogy, and it makes so much sense.
I mean, everybody buys merch or something, and you go to buy 25 keychains, they're $5 each. But if you go to buy 100, they're $1 each. So you get the better deal when you buy more. So when you're talking 100,000 figures versus 5,000 figures, I'm sure that you can price point those figures much cheaper.
Well, I mean, the reality is it's the biggest expense is making the tools, which is the industry term for molds. So Why don't we just use molds, and everybody will know what I'm talking about. When I say tools, they'll be like, there's a wrench. You got to buy a wrench. It's like, no. Is that a crescent wrench? No, it's not a crescent wrench. Flathead? What do we got here? So in making molds, like, you're talking about molds that can cost, for all this stuff, you're talking about stuff that, for an arm, for example, that's this big, your mold is going to be this big by this big by this big, and it's solid steel, because they pump that stuff in there at like 20,000 pounds per square inch to get it pressurized in there, no air bubbles, everything, and all the engineering. So when you start talking about all the parts, like, it's hilarious. The first time you go to the factory with anyone, you're like, oh, and there'll be all the molds laying out on the floor. And they'll be like, oh, hey, can you grab that mold? And they'll go to pick it up, and they'll be like,
Really?
It's a joke. Like, oh my God, like, this little thing weighs, 300 pounds. When you're talking about big molds, like when we did like the molds for the Super Shoguns and stuff like that, you see them and they load them in with chains like you're loading in a car engine at an auto body shop.
God. Wow.
So the money actually is in there. So you're talking about spending $50,000, $75,000 just to make the tools. So if you're taking, for easy math, let's say it's $50,000 in tooling, and you're spreading that over 100,000 figures, it's 50 cents a figure for tooling. If you take $50,000 in tooling and you spread it over 5,000 figures, it's $10 a figure.
Right.
So that's where most of the money is set in, is tooling, and then before that, sculpt and development. The actual plastic is expensive, but nowhere near as expensive.
Yeah,
So
just like wrestling figure fans just aren't used to this model yet, and I think it's our jobs to educate them that these aren't just these. We're not making 100,000 of these. It's such a low run.
And I think
it's something that hasn't been done.
I think asking them to be so patient and not understanding that the toy process is basically a year-long thing. No matter what you're making, right? I think that's the thing that I think are just going over people's heads. And like us as like deep toy nerds, we love it because I feel like when you pre-order something from Super 7, you're almost like involved and invested, and you do get the emails and the updates and things like that. And I think that's really fun. But I understand also from Jump Street that I'm waiting a year, where I don't think, these people are really soaking that information in.
I think you need some time.
You need some time, and you've got to once you get the first thing in your hands, then usually you're like, oh, okay, now I've been through this. I understand what's going on, and you become much more okay with it. We also didn't do ourselves any favors by it ending up taking 16 months instead of 12 months.
Can you walk us through some of that, some of the hiccups that went on there? I mean, obviously,
Yeah, I mean, within that, we work with a lot of different factories. So the factory that made these figures for us is the same factory that makes these figures. So we will.
Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing with that? What's going on?
I'm just saying. I know what other people are doing. Yeah, I see what's on the streets. I talk to the kids.
All right.
So we specifically went to that factory originally to say, hey, we want these. We know where wrestling figures come from. We want to make sure that we are delivering at least that quality, and our job is to deliver better. The catch, of course, is that we are not Mattel. So if anything is going to get bumped, it's the little run by these guys over here.
Got it.
And so we got through a third of the way through production, and we ended up pulling the figures out of the factory because it was just like we were already 6 months behind and we hadn't even seen anything yet. So we just had to pull them and send them to our primary factory. So we went out of our primary use case to go to the other factory specifically because they were the WW. I always want to say WWE, WWF instead of just like WW.
Doesn't matter.
But, the wrestling people factory. So we were trying to go out of our normal production. We've made stuff there before, but go out of our normal production route to have a bit more synergy with what the product was supposed to be. But because of that, we're a small fish in a big sea, and we kept getting bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped until we finally literally just took the molds back to our factory to finish all the tightening and detailing of the molds and then make them at our primary factory.
Wow.
So in the end, I think you can see when you touch and you look at some of the grades on the plastic and how the plastic feels, there's a different feel between these two things. So that's the major reason. Major,
There you go.
Major reason
I like what you did there.
that it feels that it took so long. And we're still sort of dealing that with wave 2 because pulling molds from one factory to another factory is a very political thing, as you could well imagine. And then, of course, nobody likes the way they were engineering it at the other factory. And then they've got to go back, and it creates a giant mess. But then I think you guys have seen, which we may be talking about later or not, that stuff that we've had at our primary factory from sort of start has gone a lot quicker. I don't know if I'm supposed to hold these things up or not.
Hold them up. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you've seen those move a lot faster.
We'll save that for last.
We'll save that for last.
Yeah.
But you've seen that stuff move a lot faster because we haven't had to switch factories and sort of take a step back and redo the work to get it to where it needs to be. That said, the customer on the other end doesn't care. They don't care that I had to switch. They don't care that I know that I gave you money for that a year ago, and it's still not in my box. And you told me it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we haven't ever met before, so I'm not happy about that, which I can understand completely. It's not, I was about to say it's not invalid, but that's a double negative. So that criticism is completely valid. But at the same time, I don't want to get it out the door and have it be underwhelming. Now, photographs from ringside aside,
let's talk about it. We can talk about it.
Well, I think that's one of those things that, now that people have started getting them in their hands, I'm starting to get a lot of messages through social media. People like, oh man, now that I have these are, I don't know how that happened. These are nowhere near as shitty as I thought they were going to be.
I don't know if you're aware of this. So we went on Twitch last weekend, and Brian.
Oh, no, I watched it.
Okay, so Brian was the only person in the world to have these because Ringside got them in. He went and got them. They hadn't shipped anybody. And Brian has them, and he's talking about how good they are. And there's these people saying, no, there's not. This is wrong. You don't have it in your hand.
It was.
What are you talking about?
Well, and not only that, then he starts with fucking Will, and the belt is broken. Really? Oh
Hey.
God! I'm just sitting there at
Hey.
home, just going like, could
Hey.
this have gone any worse?
There's no such
Maybe
thing as
it
a
could.
perfect wrestling figure. I just think with how long this took and how excited people were, then the photos were bad. I mean, people were expecting like Okada himself to pop out of the box and like greet the consumer.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Okada, like, for me, like,
unobtainable expectations. It felt like.
Yeah, maybe, but like, like same thing. And I had to come up here that night when the ringside photos came up. I think we chatted about it. Like, I had to drive back up to the office and like open up the samples again. Like, am I smoking crack? I remember these things being like me getting these going like, oh yeah, when these people get these.
I had a very similar experience because I went to ringside and I at least like unsleeved them all to make sure like all the parts are there and like whatever. I'm very nitpicky about paint, application and stuff. So I knew they looked great. Then I saw the photos when I got home and I was like, is something wrong with me? Like, or is like my eyes messed up?
Crazy red shift on them. Like, Will looked like he had like somebody had done a red rub on parts of his chest and not others.
I mean, the funny thing is Jazzwares had a very similar situation with their series 2 where the photos came out first and everyone was like, oh no, these new figures are not going to be good. And then it's just bad photography, which we didn't know at the time, like that's a thing. I'm not a photographer. I'm just going, oh, these are what they look like. Oh no. But Mark's like, oh no, this guy's
I knew exactly what it was. I mentioned this on the podcast that's coming out Friday. It's out now on patreon.com/MajorWFPod if you want to listen to it early. But as a photographer, I knew right away when Jazzwares put out those pictures, I saw in my hand that MJF before it came out, and I knew it didn't look like that. And that was just a lens issue. They were too close to the figure when they took that picture. So with what Ringside did, there was a little bit of white balance problem. That's the color.
There was
the lighting was
red
too harsh
on it.
Yeah, the lighting was too harsh, so it made it shiny, like too shiny. And then the depth of field was off, which made the face look weird. So that's the problem. It's a photography thing.
I also think some of the pictures were fine, but it's the bad. Everyone just wants to take the bad and spread the bad around. Because John from Ringside sent me the pictures the other day, and we're like, are these new pictures? Like, no, these are the original pictures. I'm like, oh, well, I guess people just took the 3 bad ones, and that's what they passed along to their friends. Nobody wants to tell people good news. Nobody leaves a good Yelp review. You know what I'm saying?
I also think, like, with these, you have so many hand options. There's a lot of articulation. You could do some pretty epic poses, and they were just like...
Yeah, Will Ospreay was Will was like this.
Will was like what was going on, yeah.
And I think, it's jerky because ideally...
Brian, let's see those pictures. I mean, let's see those figures.
Sure, guys. Well, keep talking, Brian.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
So ideally, what we do ahead of time, and this is the funny thing too, is that because Ringside bought in so big, they arranged their own cargo from China. So somehow they got theirs in before we got ours. So we're not able to get everything out in front of everywhere. Like even now, Brian, on your lighting, the way this looks. The paint on him with the light coming off his chest looks like he's got like really like light colored pecs with like sprays down the center instead of like this really subtle paint.
Yeah, you can't see that, Brian, but we can. So you really have to hold the things in hand. If you want to look at like the details that people are complaining about or upset about, you have to hold them in your hands.
So I mean, it's one of those things where coming back to it, it's like our job also with our partners is to make sure that we're helping them provide photography ahead of time. Just like Mark was saying with lenses. I mean, so much of that is people want to take a camera. Like I got this camera with a decent lens and I've set this thing up, 12, 15, 18 inches away from the camera and I'm shooting it. Well, if you want to make it actually look like it's supposed to do, you need to set up a camera across the room with the long lens so that you're not distorting and foreshortening everything so that it actually flattens out into the correct, 100%. So there's so many little things, but I think because the pent-up demand was so much, obviously, and our price is so much higher than they're used to. Granted, there's a lot of Mattel wrestling figures that are $29.99, so we're not crazy, but we're still 50% more. So people are waiting for like this thing that's amazing. Now, I'm going to say that I feel like we did a very good job and we made a very good product. That said, there's going to be a guy always that's like, you can make these things for 5 cents in China. Right. And it's like, trust me, you can't, or otherwise everyone would.
Yeah. So let's talk about like the packaging or some of the choices you guys made. Like especially we're just talking about like you Osprey. Like I kind of the more and more I mess with these, I like the way the skin tones kind of are not like uniform. They have kind of like I don't know, shading to them, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, a really light sort of spray that goes. Yeah, it's sort of it's not a paint. It's essentially a dye. You use a transparent dye that you spray on. That's only like a couple degrees different than the skin tone, and you spray that from a distance, so you get a soft variation in that, because no one's skin tone is perfectly even across everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
especially pro wrestlers covered in spray tan.
Exactly.
A lot of people commenting in the chat today about Broski's tan right now. So you must have just went.
I got 2 tans today.
Why?
2 tans?
Always ready.
Always ready.
Just in case he gets booked on a Wednesday, you know. We know.
Well, you know, but it's also sort of a different thing. Like, you know, we'll talk about like, you know, I have to, once again, I'm doing the left-right thing here. I'm like, which stride?
It's so hard.
You know, with Ishii, like, we know we're going to make the soft goods, and you guys were like, why doesn't this have Velcro in the back? And I'm like, Velcro in the back? Then you would see it. Like, I'm trying to hide everything. I'm trying to hide all the seams. I'm trying to make this as perfect as possible. I realize it's easier to get off, but oh God.
I understand the excuse. I mean, like, it's not like these toys are not meant for a 6-year-old to bash around and play with all day long, right? They can do it, but an adult collector is essentially opening these, posing it, and admiring it. So that's perfect excuse is what I'm saying.
Put that camera down a little bit, Brian. Show those guys.
Oh, and then you've got the Thunder Liger there too.
Yeah, I'm just doing a comparison here. It's the Storm Liger. There's an Elite, Chris Hero, we'll call him tonight, Osprey, and Okada. Just so everyone get like these guys are all in the same family, which is really important to me as a collector. I think was an awesome choice. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. Liger's tricky because his rights also exist with Dynamic, which is Go Nagai and his company. So
yes, we heard that.
Getting everybody lined up is a little bit tricky. But
so we talked, Brian, the other day on the phone, and you were explaining to me your choice for the knee and the elbow articulation. Can you explain that to people? Because when you explained it to me, I had this aha moment, and I tried to discuss it on the podcast. I could tell I wasn't doing you justice, so I'd rather it just come out of your mouth.
That was my, before Brian answers this, that was one of my favorite complaints, because that was like one of the most things across the board. Like, where are the double jointed knees and arms? It's like, guys, the pictures, these figures have been out for over a year. That was never there. Like you're making up a demand. You're so angry that you're just looking for something to complain about.
Well, I think that there's 2 sides to that. One is a lot of the figures that they're buying right now have double jointed knees and have double jointed elbows. And there's definitely a perception with a lot of people, depending on what you want your figures to do, that more articulation means better quality. And as somebody that makes figures, I don't always agree. More articulation sometimes can be very, very important. Sometimes I think it can get in the way of what the figure is trying to do. And I always come back to what is the primary use of the figure. In as much, there are people obviously that do amazing photography with these guys, and they're coming off the top ropes and they're doing all this amazing, and it looks amazing. But the reality is, for 99% of the time with any of these figures, they're going to be standing up like this on a shelf in the world that you're at. And I don't want to take away articulation, but I want to make sure that it presents as well as I can. So that's part of what I do, is try to make these things as realistic and close to what they're supposed to be as possible. When I look at, and I knew that we were going to talk about this, which is exciting, so I went and grabbed some stuff. So like,
Mark, full screen them, Mark.
Here you go. So this is Hitman, figure. And when you look at that leg, when you come at it from this, I got to get lined up correctly. There we go. When you look at that from the side, you've got to lose so much plastic in here on both sides of the leg to make it do this. And secondarily, I've got 2 seam lines, I've got 2 sets of pins, and I have this knee thing in the center. So for me, as a guy that gets really nerdy about toys, personally, for me, this sort of stuff drives me crazy because I don't see a figure, I see manufacturing. That's what I see. I see remnants of manufacturing. I see remnants of functional use not hidden by manufacturing. It's the same thing with the thigh swivel. This thing drives me insane. I hate it because there's a big fucking straight line right through the middle of your thigh. And you can get that articulation in the hip if you adjust how you get your hips. I can still get that full range of motion through this figure in the ball joint. I don't need to cut it here by adjusting how I make this here. And then when I go to the leg here, because I've got a single joint, I can do pinless joints. I can hide all the manufacturing. I've got only one seam. And then when you look at it, you don't see that vertical piece of nylon that's normally sitting in there for how you twist it. The only place you can see any remnants of manufacturing is on the back of the knee. Other than that, this looks like a real human leg.
Yeah.
And I'm not harping on this, but just that is what you get. This big V divot with the 2 pins and then this inserted V knee. And to me, while that functions like that, this is great. I mean, I can still get 80% of that, 70, 80% of that range of motion like this, but without losing any of the aesthetics of the leg when he's not in action, which is the majority of the time that he's going to be used.
So your preference is sacrifice a smidge of a couple percentage points of the articulation for the better looking.
So if we've taken these things on an equal level playing field, they have said, okay, we're going to bump up articulation 10 to 20%, and we're going to drop aesthetics 10 to 20%. And I'm making the counterbalance argument, which is I think that I've got enough articulation for 95% of the use cases and 95% of the collectors out there. There's going to be some guys that can't, they're not going to be able to, put the ankles up near the butt and have him in some sort of crazy pose. Yes. But at the same time, when I put him on my shelf, I'm not going to see pins. I'm not going to see seams. I'm not going to see any of those things. Like, I mean, I'm not harping on this figure, but like, look at that elbow. Look at how much plastic is missing from the center of that elbow, plus the 2 pins in the V. Like, it should be a straight line across here. You shouldn't have to see that much loss in an elbow versus just, I have to roll up the shirt a little bit, but just, where it's a regular elbow and forearm. You've only got one line. So if I'm oversimplifying it and, trying to sell my wares to the people here, running a promo on ankles and knees and stuff, it's, you go from 4 pieces of manufacturing to 1.
Now, you visible piece. Me on the phone, and it blew my mind. Cause I never really thought of it that way, but you're right. I want it to look as realistic as possible, and the pinless joints I think are incredible. And that I think people confuse that I shouldn't be spending $45. I'm getting less articulation. That's not the case necessarily.
Yeah, and that's a very common refrain. I mean, we hear it a lot when we're talking about reaction figures. Yeah, obviously there are only 5 points of articulation, and you get a lot of people are like, oh my God, like figures are so much better now. You can do so much more. Why do these look like that? And it's like, I'm not trying to make that modern 3 3/4 figure for you. I'm making a really nice version of what came out in the 70s and 80s for the guy that has the emotional reaction to that simplified form factor. I'm talking to him from an emotional point of view, not an analytical point of view. Like, we have to make distortions in our sculpts at 3 3/4 to make them feel like they're modern. They're always better, but how you remember those figures were when you were a kid versus this is a photorealistic item scaled down to 3 3/4. Then we chopped up and just put joints into. Like when we're talking about this, like I was just bringing this in, same thing like this Wolverine. It's just a straight cut right through the middle of the thigh. Like, I don't want to look at that. That looks like garbage. It's like garbage, kid.
I never liked that thigh cut on. I feel like I didn't necessarily need it. Like, what was it going to do? But you proved that with the hip, you can do all that with these figures.
It just depends on how you engineer it and what you're doing, and you've got to build in the engineering. That's why across all figures now you see that universal sort of everybody does the bicep swivel now.
Right.
Because it's perfect. It hides, whether they've got it, we've got it. It's a perfect place where you can hide articulation into what the natural form of the human body looks like. So from a distance, you don't see articulation. You just see, I'm blanking on the name right now because I'm not a wrestler, but my shoulder and my biceps.
Right.
So there you go. I don't know. It's a quadricep? Like, what is that? Is it an amplifier attached to it? I don't know.
Very interesting. I never really thought of it like that at all. Yeah.
I also think when people see the single joint knee, and correct me if I'm messing up any phrasing, that they think it's like old school where it just goes like back and forth. These go all the way around.
Yeah, there's also a swivel in there, and because that thing is in that we can hide that articulation in there. So it's like it's not just. But the goal for me is to get as much articulation as I can, but make it as hidden as possible, so that when you look at the figure, you see a human being, not manufacturing.
Right.
There's only so much of it I can do, especially with ab crunch, because I don't know what it is. Everybody loves the ab crunch, but I have yet to see anybody ever actually use an ab crunch on anything. I've never gone to anybody's house and seen like their figures doing sit-ups or anything like that. Stooped over, hands on their knees.
Maybe the opposite way, that Okada pose. Maybe.
Yeah, the up pose.
You might rock back a little bit.
It helps with the standing, I feel.
But
just a little bit.
Balancing issues, for sure.
Yeah. But even with balancing issues, you should be able to take your feet, and if you have rockers especially, and move your feet out from, I can't do it upside down, my hands here. The more you rock your feet like this and toe to toe, that should take care of all of your balance issues on your weight up and down. And that usually comes down to design flaws of where you see where people will take a figure. I'm going to use one of ours instead of somebody else's, and just go down, like starting at the top, like where is the center of balance and center of the weight? Like so many figures, they design all this stuff. And if you put them in the sort of straight line, natural pose, you'll go from the center of the head down through the body, and you'll realize that there's not even a straight line in that figure, and they'll swoop back to the feet, and they won't even have it. It will never have been designed from day one that its center of gravity is centered to the ankle up through the figure.
I'm learning so much today.
Yeah,
I'm reading the comments. I think
the comments, people are really having a good time.
People are loving this. Let's get into some things. What's with the taped unpainted?
Everyone
hand?
wants to know with the tape. Yeah.
So
Now
we walked also into a thing there. So the horrible answer to that is we have untaped hands. We made them, but it is, and this is going to sound like the biggest cop out in the world, but it's actually true. Normally, in a non-COVID world, somebody that works for Super 7 is at the factory during pack out. And we are not at the factory during pack out. We get an advanced sample. They say, this is what it looks like. This is how it's being packed. And we go, yes, pack them all and look like that. Somehow, non-taped hand got replaced with taped hands on the C grips.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just did. And then magically, every single figure magically has taped hands all of a sudden, even though there's different skin tones on these guys. Right. And it's like, and obviously then we're wading into something that wrestling collector figures have as sort of like a, sort of almost like a bad reflex Pavlovian thing of like, oh, back in the day when people didn't want to pay to tool a new set of hands, they just didn't paint a wrestling, a pair of taped hands and threw it in a box. Right. So we've got unpainted hands. So what we're trying to do, and maybe it's breaking news or whatever, but we're going to try to figure out how we can just make a pack of untaped C-gripped hands and then just send out everybody a replacement set of fists.
Oh, wow.
Because they're done. We got him.
Yeah, because that hand doesn't belong to anyone in the series 1.
Just the whole thing is mind-bogglingly confusing to me as well.
Okay.
Because it's tooled,
Yeah.
which means we have to have tooled it from way back when. So we sculpted it at some point, but who did we sculpt it for?
Yeah.
And it was probably a revision as we went around, and as we sent all the parts out, it was probably a latent part that got included within all the matrices of all the hands that we were making for the different people.
I thought it was my hand, but then I compared, and it's not even my hand.
No,
it's very similar, but it's not.
Is there maybe someone from Series 2 with a taped hand?
But they wouldn't have been tooled with Series 1.
Then I don't. You know what?
I think what it is probably was an earlier iteration of Ishii's hands that got scrapped for the ones that they wanted. So NJPW specifically asked for no tape on these hands, and no tape on the wrists.
Very detailed.
Huh?
I said it's a very detailed ask.
So I bet that what it is one of the earlier ones where we had iterations we were working on with tape on the hands, and it no longer has tape on the hands.
Right.
And so we probably erroneously tool it at the same time, but I have real hands that aren't taped. So it's more frustrating. You're like, really? Because then it's just like, okay, one set of hands is incorrectly placed in, but it's like, but then it's like, throw the whole thing out. We're done here.
Right.
It's like, like how many things can go wrong with the launch of this figure line?
Well, I have them in hand and I love them. One of the things I was super impressed with was the soft goods. Can you give any detail into how that gets done? Because some of them, especially like
wait till you see Evil. Like Evil.
Oh yeah, actually, I literally, when I opened them, I went back and looked at the pictures on Ringside for their pre-order for Series 2 to look at. I was like, wait, Evil had like a very crazy robe. Like that's going to be like next level.
Evil's robe is insane.
How are you guys doing that?
We're obviously making it. We're doing all sorts of different stuff. Like as you guys know, looking at this, each one of these soft goods, if you will, is a different material.
Yeah, that's another thing. Everything's different.
We're trying to be as faithful as we can to what it is, and obviously manufacture it in a way that still works, that will work with the figure that you can play with, but at the same time is as accurate as possible. Like, with Tanahashi, we've even got the fur pieces on here and everything else.
Great. And that's like a hard faux leather. I was like blown away by it.
Yeah. And then as you guys properly pointed out on the video, same thing. Then we've got 2 different neck mounts on this guy.
Please explain this, because
because this is so big, and because what it is, this head has a shallower mount on it so that his head and hair properly fit above this, so you can still use his head on top of this jacket. Where if you take off the jacket and put this head on, it sits a little bit lower because now you don't need that extra clearance. So it's sort of like this is the head for posing him without this on. This is the head with this on.
So then the nightmare situation is if somebody happened to take a picture of the wrong head with the jacket off, and then it looks.
Then it's like, yes. Then you can argue that the neck is too long. But at the same time, then what use cases am I doing? How are you going to be displaying this figure? How are you going to be playing with this figure? What are we going to be doing? So we tried to cover off on the 2 options, but yes, there is an A-B combination that then you lose, but we sort of went back and forth and said, okay, if we make this lower though, it's really difficult to fit all this material and everything underneath here. And then it doesn't really work. So are we going to sacrifice making this jacket like everything's awesome and then the collar sucks? Or what are we going to do? And we came back with, let's just not let this one sit as low because it looks correct.
Right.
The jacket on.
Yeah.
But with the jacket off, it doesn't look quite as correct. So we modified it on this one so it sits a little lower so that this one looks correct with the jacket off.
Before we have some other people ask some questions, a lot of people, you can't answer everybody's specific order questions, but can you just give any insight on like where are these orders right now? I know Ringside got theirs early. If you ordered from Super 7, is there some sort of expectation? A lot of people are asking, where's my order?
What legitimately so. So normally what happens is we work with our partners to say, hey, this is the ship date, and everybody ships at the same exact time.
Mhm.
In the case that this is really the first real order we've done with Ringside, we had not done that. So same thing, going back to because Ringside orders in bulk, Ringside doesn't pick up their orders domestically. They pick them up at the port in China. So when everything hits the port in China, Ringside picks up theirs. They arrange freight to America. Then we arrange freight of our stuff to America. And depending on what port you're at, there can be a China. Like if you ship to LA, it's a week faster than shipping to San Francisco. If you're doing a partial container versus a whole container, things change times. Like if Ringside already had a whole container that was already booked, they were putting these things in, it might move faster than if they were trying to put them into a half a container. Secondarily, when you get to port, if it goes through normally, it's about a week and a half. If it gets flagged for scanning or anything else by the Port Authority, then you've got 2 weeks added on to everything.
Damn.
There's a host of things that can happen along the way from like, okay, it's at the port, hands up, 4 weeks, and we have it in the warehouse. Some days sometimes it's 4 weeks, sometimes it's 7 weeks. And so usually what we do is buffer out sort of to worst case scenario and say, that's the ship date. And then we talk to all of our partners and say, everybody that gets them ships them at the same time. So in a case like this, it's really just us and Ringside. But if you're talking about Turtles, then it's us, it's Heo, it's Polyphony, it's Big Bad Toy Store, it's Entertainment Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that is perceived as being able to ship earlier has a leg up on the competition because people will order from them because they can get it a week earlier than somebody else. So in those cases, we always sit down ahead of time and say, okay, everybody, your ship date is X. Doesn't matter when you get them. No one can ship before this date so that it's a level playing field.
Right.
In the case like Ringside, since it was just us and Ringside, we hadn't really thought about it that way because it didn't present what we thought presented a problem. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they got theirs a week and a half ago, and ours show up this Thursday or Fridays and then won't ship till next week. So, yeah, it becomes a big deal because it's like, wait, I ordered them from you guys, but these other guys got them 3 weeks earlier. And it presents the exact same business case problem, which is I don't want to buy them from you in the future. I'll just buy them from Ringside because they'll show up faster.
Okay.
So I can tell you with all certainty that when Wave 2 hits, we will all ship on the exact same day.
Except to the host of the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast.
They might get some early. They might get an advanced carton.
So I did hear that.
You get sometimes with those guys,
Right. So you will be shipping next week, you think?
We should be shipping next week. We're supposed to get them Thursday or Friday. I mean, they've been at the port for a little while, but they're supposed to be in our warehouse Thursday or Friday. Then you go through the whole rigmarole of like, okay, there's 13 shippable zones in the United States, and what zone goes first? And okay, who bought 4 as complete sets and who broke down? And then there's a whole shipping, like a beautiful mind matrix that happens on what's the most efficient way to pack boxes. I don't even pretend to know how that works. I just know that there's guys with labels making stuff happen.
Got it. All right, you want to open up the couple questions? Can we do that?
Yeah,
of course.
Sure.
Okay. All right, guys. No specific order questions.
If you have a specific question about your order, first and foremost, let me finish that. You will be getting them.
Yeah, come on, guys.
And you should have gotten an email from Super 7 asking you to confirm your address, because the worst thing that can happen is you ordered it, a year later you've moved, we mail it to you, it doesn't come through, then it gets shipped back, then I got to pay to ship it to you again, and then you get it a month late and you're pissed off. So you should have already gotten an email from us confirming your address. If you have not gotten an email confirming your address, send an email to customercare@super7.com, and Rudy will follow up with you in a couple days, because then he'll be inundated with people going, hey, what's going on? And he'll be just like, oh shit, what's going on? Yoko said right here, address changes were due March 1st, Brian. So you're already late.
Oh, wow.
You're already late. So if you didn't get the email, though, reach out. But thank you, Yoko. And quite honestly, she should be on here because she's much better at this than me. She told me she was going to watch and just hope it wasn't a train wreck.
I think it's going.
I think it's going great,
far.
guys.
Going
I feel real good about this.
I think you could probably sell a shirt tomorrow or something. Some pins, some Brian
Yeah.
Flynn pins.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
All right, a lot of people are asking about Series 3. Is there any details on Series 3?
Series 3 is done and has been done for a long time. But I was not going to release Series 3 until Series 1 was in people's hands, because asking people to pay for a third wave before they even got a first wave seemed to be a sort of jerk move. Okay. So obviously we're trying to get wave 1 into everybody's hands as soon as possible, but wave 3 is imminent. And when I say imminent, I think we have it planned for end of next month.
Wow. Okay. That's exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have
I think you'll see some very exciting characters, but
that's fine. Wrestlers are characters. Trust me, wrestlers are characters.
Quinn Flynn ain't easy. That's the shirt.
That's his shirt.
I can't find the first one, but a lot of people are asking about the scaling and specifically Ishii being tall.
I don't think
Ishii's not tall. He's short.
He's tall. Yeah. He's the shortest one for sure.
Yeah, Ishii. So I can't hold them up here, but that's a scale difference for Ishii and Tanahashi. So he's shorter. I think the real thing people came back with was they felt that Will was too tall.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
And I think Will, the top of Will's head is probably the same height as Ishii, but that hair is got a good 4 feet on him.
The hair on a lot of them are beautifully sculpted, by the way. Just like I don't know. It's just
I like the little. I love his Superman curl.
Yeah, everything
got there.
All right, trying to find a good question here.
Is there
other than all the ones that are like, I hate him?
How about an update on Series 2?
Series 2 is going. It's not going near as fast as it. It's suffering from the same thing we went through with Series 1, and so it got. I cannot look at Yoko reveal Wave 3.
She's
this is the kind of thing where if I did that, if I was just on Instagram and I revealed Wave 3, I would get a text from Yoko about 5 minutes later. It was like, "What are you doing? That is not the plan. We have a plan. This is when the reveal happens."
But Yoko says you can do it now. So.
Oh, Yoko says you can do it. Yeah.
Yoko can type it in there, and if Yoko does it, then I don't get yelled at.
Ooh, I like that.
That's a good deal.
Yoko,
all right. The heat's on.
Truth or dare, Yoko?
Does Super 7 and 10 on making more wrestling stars, perhaps some legends, Steiner Brothers, Sabu, Sandman, blah blah blah?
I like this question.
I like that.
We have talked about a lot of it. I mean, I hate to say we've slowed down a little bit, but we have, simply because I need to get NJPW 1 out. I need to get NJPW 2 out. I need to get these two ugly dudes out. I need to get out, I need to get a couple more things in people's hands before we really start trying to put other things out there. But yes, we've been talking a lot. Mr. Myers has been hitting me up on a near weekly basis with his. I
have all the connections. I have all the ideas.
It's true.
I want to make it happen. Yes.
So yes, the idea will be that we will continue on to make a lot of this other stuff. Some of the things, obviously, we were talking a little bit earlier. This is not the final, but close to final. The sash is too long, the stuff. But NJPW Andre is pretty much done. Not quite complete, but pretty much done. Then you've got Singlet Andre. Everybody makes black singlet. Nobody makes that yellow singlet. That yellow singlet's amazing. Yellow singlet. He wore the yellow singlet with red boots. I believe he was wrestling Hogan in that one.
Huh.
I got this one.
Trunks or singlet?
Singlet. Full-blown yellow singlet.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that.
I'm going to get on the Google machine for that.
Speaking of
somebody right now is Googling it that's talking about this.
Let me ask you this question, then I'll find the picture. I'll put it up. So a lot of people ask about the attires. This one seems to be a little more negative. The attires specifically, did you guys decide
all over the place?
No, I saw the questions because some are from 2017, some are from 2019.
That's what it means. Yeah.
That is there's definitely opinions on both sides about what year or what version of a character should be shown. And I would say that, it's a negotiation to figure out which version of which character, of which wrestler we're going to be making and what robe. In a lot of cases, we tried to go to like, what's the most iconic version? Like, what's that one you really remember?
Sure.
As opposed to, like, what are they wearing now? But there was definitely, a lot of back and forth. Every time a wrestler changed his outfit, there was a lot of questions about, can we just update the outfit? Or if the order's already done, like, we can't change it. The order's already done.
That's particularly hard in pro wrestling because, like, if whatever Wolverine wears what he wears in a movie, that's it, right? That's not going to change on you or anything.
Right.
Whereas, like, I could shave my head next week and you're gonna be like, what the man? Like,
or you could be James Harden and get traded away from the Rockets.
How many times did Broski asked to be more jacked?
I did. I asked the one time.
There's official emails where he wrote it in there. I saw it.
The man is jacked already. I don't need that there.
Well, because if we have input and we can choose some things, and the torsos are already made. All I asked was, "Hey, can we make me a little more jacked?" And you guys did it because I have the new sample and it correct jacked torso. So thank you so much.
Somebody asked about a reaction line with the pod crew. I'm in on that.
That's one that we've definitely talked about. Obviously, making reaction figures is a very different beast from making this stuff, and it can happen quicker, wider, easier. We've talked about it a lot. It's been sort of a question on whether or not, I hate to say it this way because it sounds a little lame, but like whether or not the wrestling consumer would care, because they've been buying, I'm going to use an example, this thing at $19.99 for so long that when we hit them up for an $18 3 3/4 reaction figure, is that collector just going to be like, no way?
I think that me and Brian, or maybe it was me and Brian, we all just sort of figured out this year that those reaction figures aren't necessarily supposed to be opened. It's like the beautiful packaging.
My daughter has the Nightmare Before Christmas ones, and they're unbelievable.
I opened mine, guys. I have too many that I can't keep in the package. It's too real estate. I gotta open them.
I collect the MLB and the mascots, and I think they look better on the.
I agree, but I need them. I just don't have the real estate to display them in the package. I gotta let them breathe, baby. I love the line. Keep it coming. If there's some wrestling or major pod ones, I'm in.
Yeah,
you got one sale.
It's definitely something that we're talking about and consider. It's just it's that same thing. It's tricky because I'm always sort of cognizant of how much I'm asking the collector to spend on my toys. So if I'm talking about a Turtles collector, for example, that's an easy one. A wave of 4 figures at this point is $180 for Ultimates for Turtles figures. It's not an insignificant amount of money. So every 4 months on cadence, I'm asking that guy. So and then ideally every 8 months, I'm dropping the new figures before I give him the next wave. But I'm sort of pacing that guy along. Trying not to overwhelm him, even though they're always like a week after they get the figures, they're like, "Where's the next ones?" I'm like, If I dropped $180 every month, at a certain point, you're like, okay, wait, I just spent $2,500 this month on turtle figures with you. This year, not this month. Like, I can't do that. So I try to be cognizant of how much money I'm asking them. So if I'm doing Ultimates every 4 months, opposite 2 months every 4 months is when I come in with reaction. And I try to just, even though people are always like, well, when can I get more? I feel like that's probably asking enough from them. So like, if we're talking about this, that's why, same thing, we haven't done wave 3 because I haven't delivered you wave 1. I'm not going to ask you to spend another $180 with me until you have something in your hands. I think that's disingenuous.
Plus, I feel like you're betting on yourselves because you're like, well, once someone has this in their hand, wave 3's pre-order is going to be so much more, right? Because they're going to be more excited. That's what I think, at least, right?
I hope. It's an interesting sort of thing, the psychology of the collector. Just like right now, we're dealing with wave 1. the psychology has already moved from originally, which is like, oh, when these things come out, these are supposed to be really special. We're going to really see what these come out with. And it might have been like, this is really cool. I don't like this feature, but these are really cool. And that's the mentality that you start with. Or right now, the mentality that people are starting with is, these figures are awful. Well, maybe they're not as bad as I thought they were. And bringing people up is definitely going to take a little bit more time, but I can't make that decision for them. So,
well, we're going to try our best to spread the good news, because we love these figures. And I know at first everyone's like, they're making Super 7 major pod figures. They have to say they're good. But listen to the Twitch from last week or the pod. We list our critiques. But overall, these are excellent figures. I mean, are they perfect? No. But find me one perfect wrestling figure. It's impossible. You know what I'm saying? There's always room for improvement. I think first time out of the gate, these figures are incredible.
I think there's a lot of things in here that are different than what people have gotten before. And, you know, we can always be better. But like, you know, jackets and soft goods like this really haven't been done, I don't think, quite to this level. You know, like this thing is ridiculous. With all the stuff and the gold, just like, you know, and then I can understand why somebody might look at this jacket and say, hey, this is because of how the seams lay together. This is too poofy. I don't like it because it's too poofy. But, you know, it's still like, how do we replicate most accurately his jacket? I mean, and quite honestly, I mean, we literally had to go license the jackets from the guys that make them. Like it's a separate licensing deal just for the jackets.
Man,
you know, that's
intense.
It's crazy.
I just have to say this real quick. Austin Creed donating 20 subs in the chat.
Oh, baby.
Whoa.
Thank you very much. If you're still in here.
Quincy, baby. Is he here?
I think he was at least 4 minutes ago or something.
Wow.
So
well, we appreciate that.
much. Thank you.
There you go, Austin Creed.
Awesome.
Very generous.
Nice.
So, are there any more questions, Mark?
You want to switch subjects at all?
I was going to switch subjects.
You
got a box over there?
I do have a box.
You have a box. Look at that. And I'm going to say this as somebody that does this all day long. Although there's still some work to be done, even when these boxes showed up, I was like, damn, that box looks good.
I will take credit. It was my idea to put the title on, so I'm going to pat myself on the back of that one.
I'll never forget Broski calling me to explain the way this packaging would be, and I did not understand it at all until I saw a photo of it. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the package will have a package on top of the package that has a package. And I'm like, what?
Exactly. Yeah, you take off the belt to see your guys' logo, and then that's the slip cover that we do.
That's what holds the belt. Inside. That's what's holding the belt, by the way.
What is it? Like a little clip?
It's like a little tab that's, you know.
All right, cool.
And what I love is like, these are in like the same universe, but they're not exactly the same. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So they match, but they're not identical, which I really, really like.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
But yeah, the lightning bolts and everything, and the gold and the multicolor foil on the belts, like.
Yeah.
Guys, this is Major Pod merch, by the way. For you Major Pod complete.
The copy? I mean, guys, scratch that figure itch.
Yeah.
It has the Major Pod logo right there.
That's true.
Yeah, with the gloss and the matte on it.
I'll let Matt go full screen with his before we unveil what's actually in here.
All right, Matt,
I mean, it's pretty much the same as Brian's, but just my logos, my colors, you know, the always ready on the back. And it's hard to tell through this video, but like there's a texture to the always ready, like on the box.
Okay.
You know, nice shine, nice little texture to it.
Yeah, we've got a gloss and matte varnish going there. So you've got the black is matte, always ready, and then your bio and photo are glossed. Yeah,
so I mean, this, like, I'm gonna let him breathe, guy, but this is something I think you need one in the package, out of the pack, because the Super 7 packaging, it's just unbelievable. You first get the cardboard box and it's wrapped up.
So they're gonna come in this still too, right?
Yeah. That's the chipper box.
Yeah, no matter what, because that's ultimate, right, across the board.
Yeah, well, that's just in general, like. That's the shipper box to protect the figure. And then the funny part is then we put the shipper box in yet another box to make sure.
Awesome.
But it's like you want it to show up not damaged.
Right. So
Brian, did you write the copy for the back?
You know what? Someone did, and it wasn't me. And I don't think I can say who it was, but I'll just say he's a real pro at it.
Yeah, I think me and Brian did the first draft, or I wrote Brian's and mine, and we had someone proofread it, kind of put their spin on it.
All right.
Yeah.
But when we got these in the mail the other day, I was absolutely
So Joe Shoes
blown
wrote it.
away.
Not Joe Shoes, no.
CPA.
This is one of my favorite parts. So, and this was a last minute addition that I'm so glad we made. My entrance mask.
Yep.
So a lot of people have asked me about the mechanics of this, so I'd love to show it right now. Take the jacket off.
Yeah, let's see
So you
that.
can really see. Jacket, by the way, we like to say hard goods. We know that's not the real name, but
Well, soft goods generally means cloth.
yeah. So we say when jackets aren't soft goods, we say hard goods. But I know that's not the right term. And then there, it slips right over, like super easy, like on all the heads. Looks friggin' awesome.
So what I love
Poker
about
Man
my
is jacking up.
Ooh, Jack. Thanks, Cole.
But Mark, if you could full screen me for a second, what I love about this vest, and I'm psycho, so like I took it and I compared it next to mine. Look at that Zombie Sailor Toys pin molded on. That's not painted on. That's molded on. Every zipper, every button, every stitch, every seam is exact to my vest. Just incredible. Like it was, I could not believe it. Like every little zippers on the side, every seam, every stitch. This is it. This is this is the vest.
And the hardest part about that, quite honestly, is making sure you've got enough depth in the sculpt so that when you paint it, it's still there and doesn't get lost, but at the same time isn't too big where it looks corny. So it's riding that fine line, which is a perfect example on the money that
Right.
a comic comes with. You know, it's like we sculpted all that detail in, but you can't see it. Like if you run your finger across it, you'll be like, oh man, they sculpted all the detail, but it's so subtle, you can't see it.
Does it come with a can of topics?
That's
Ouch.
fucked up, guys.
Ouch. Mark, make me full screen. This is a podcast host version of me. Backwards hat, the dog tags, the mic.
Yeah.
So very fun. 4 heads, which is kind of like I don't know if I don't know the business side of it, but it seems flattering because these New Japan guys each have 1 head. We have, 2 heads. We have 4. So
Yeah, well, that was also us sitting here going, well, yeah, what about this head? Can you know, do you mind putting this? Why not? Let's put on another head.
And
Sort of
here's
sort of
podcast
making
Matt
sauce or something.
with the hat and
Straight brim.
the straight brim, the flat brim with the mic. These figures are just incredible to me. Like for the first time ever, I have my real boots with the straps. You can't really see. I'm not wearing Sting's boots repainted. These are my boots. Like all the pictures we took, you guys nailed it. And I'm super excited to see.
Here's man bun, Brian.
When do you do a man bun? I've never seen you in a
I
man bun.
literally wear a man bun everywhere I go, Mark.
I've never seen you with a man bun. I don't
I
think.
mean, this is a little cleaner. It's got a little messiness to it, but it's
Got it.
there. It's hanging off.
All right.
Yeah, so I have like the smug face, the smiling face, the tongue out face, which I think is my favorite. Like we love
That's
toys.
when you specifically were like, yes, that's the one that needs to be on the figure when it's in the box.
Oh yeah, like I think it's just so great. You know, it's being a fan of toys your whole life, and like we've been so fortunate to have others from Brian and Matt figures from Jax and Mattel, but you don't really have any input in those whatsoever. So when you get to create your own figure and you're being asked, well, what do you want? It's like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, literally,
what do I want? I don't know.
you really have next to no input when you get a figure,
Yeah, so
otherwise.
to make sure that the boots are ours and the kick pads are Brian's and that we have these interchangeable heads and the major pod dog tags and the $1,000 broski bucks and like the hands. I'm like, oh well, I've never had the LI hands. Can we do that here? So for the first time ever, I'm gonna have the LI hands, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, and we're excited to give them to you, man.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, and then it's cool, obviously, with this for you guys is also you can look at this and like I'm just going to use Brian's because I have it in my hand, but then also all the different colors that you see in here indicate the different tools that are used. So the fact that this forearm and the hands are tooled in the same cavity as the calves and the feet. That's why they're all this sort of yellow color. They do different colors to show you. Every single tool gets shot in a different color to show you where it's paired with. So you understand. That's why. So this, obviously, the shoulder and biceps are in a different tool. The waist, you can feel a slightly different durometer, is in with the jacket and is in with the hair. Then you see that this is gray instead of black. So the thighs are in a different tool. The torso and abs here are in a different tool. And then you can see all the discs, the nylon discs are yet in a different tool, because all the discs and all this stuff are nylon. They're not ABS and PVC, because like this is ABS, this is PVC.
Whoa.
You've got different materials in here and then different durometers. So just, one of those things, like when you get a true test shot and it's all you're like, why did they do all these weird colors? They just pick whatever color material they have laying around. Mm-hmm. But the point is, every tool gets a different color. So it's like a matrix of how these things line up within the molds.
Got it.
Whoa,
somebody asked,
never realized it.
Will the Broski Bucks have deco?
Yes, the Broski Bucks will have deco.
Wow, look at that.
And what about, okay, I'm going to give you guys some crazy credit here, because I had this idea to come with mini figures, but in my mind, I thought you guys would just like take like rectangles and like then print on what the figure would look like. But no, you guys molded mini figures. It was like, I didn't even know this could be done. And you guys did.
Yeah, so it's going to be one of those things like when everybody on Instagram or whatever, where they have the phone with the picture inside, with the picture inside.
Yeah.
Inside. It's going to be full size you holding toy you holding mini toy you.
I know. These are just so great. I know our fans are excited, and they could still pre-order them from Ringside for those who missed
New Japan Series 1 that you missed out on is still at Ringside. And you could use
in a case like that, what happens is Ringside, in a case, and thank you to Ringside, obviously, is they go in and say, okay, hey, we think people we want to have these in stock for X amount of time, so they'll over order their actual pre-orders just so they have some to sell. So now if you want one, the only place in the world you can go to get them is Ringside. You can't even buy them from us.
Right.
You should probably use discount code MAJOR and save 10% when you do that.
I was just going to say that.
Shout out to the Ringside crew, though, for believing in the product.
Is Broski's minifigure jacked enough?
As it looks pretty jacked from here. It's not. I see some abs and some backs. I can't. It's small, guys.
It's exactly 1.5 fingernail long, so it's got some definition. I don't know how much definition we're going to get.
I mean, like our job and like our goal with these figures is to make them the most detailed wrestling figures of all time. So what I love is that we have this relationship, Brian. So I can call you or text you, Brian, we need to fix this or change that, and then it'll get done. I need to be more jacked. In the next version, it's done. So I'm very confident that these will be the most detailed. Like every button is going to be the exact color. Every zipper is going to be the exact color. Like we're going to get it. We're psycho about this. The list that we sent Super 7, I'm sure they wanted to kill me.
Let's pump the brakes. The list you sent was nuts. Mine was like this big. Yours was like.
No, but I mean, that's the thing is much as you guys said, it's like it can always be better. And even once this thing is all said and done, there's going to be things that we look at and go, oh, what if we would have done X or Y or Z or anything else like that? That's part of it for us, is like we're always trying to figure out what's the next better way to do it. Is there a better way to do a knee? Is there a better way to do an elbow or a shoulder? Is there a better way to do soft goods? Is there a better way to do any of it? And I don't know. I guess I didn't really end that really well. I just
I think we all love as collectors and fans that we're living in this like wrestling figure renaissance where you can buy Super 7s and these AEW Jazzwares and the Mattel Elites, and they're all in the same universe, so whether you're displaying them together, they all mesh, or if you're doing figure photography or playing, they're all together. And there's never been a time in wrestling figure history where you've had so many companies in the same scale, in the same universe, and it's such a great time to be a collector. And thank you for adding another line of guys to our rosters.
Yeah, I mean, I think across everything right now, we've had this conversation a couple of times that it definitely feels like for action figure collectors as a whole, it's like this is the golden era of action figures. Like there has never been this much stuff. Like if you want, I don't know, if you want a Batman, you can get it in 3 3/4, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, 7-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch. You can get it 1960s Batman, 1980s Batman, 90s Batman, Bruce Timm Batman, Batman the movie, you know, grungy dark Batman. You can get anything you want, and it's kind of awesome.
Yeah,
but it's also one of those things where you're like, it's almost an embarrassment of riches at times too.
A bunch of people have asked about what it's been like working with the Good Brothers. Good experience so far?
Oh man,
yeah. You the difference between working with these guys and the Good Brothers is they're like, that looks cool. Thanks, brother.
And then we message them and go, no, you need to like take this seriously. These are going to be badass figures, man. Like,
quite honestly, that especially Doc. I mean, but they've taken it seriously, but they, they're also sort of like, they're just like, it's cool to do, and they know how much it means to the collectors, like especially Doc because his son collects.
Yeah,
they know even if it's something that they like to say a 5 or a 6, the fact that these guys that they know other people love it to 10, and they want to make sure that when they deliver it, it comes to that same level for the fans. And especially with Doc, he's like, when are we gonna make 6 Ferguson? I'm like, holy up, man. I gotta get you out first. Then
holy smokes.
You can see about 6 Ferguson or something else. But for us, obviously, if we want to go back, the funniest part about all of this is, part of this is because you guys weren't under contract for a hot minute.
Right.
Because I remember when I reached out, I was like, hey, guys, I know this sounds really rude, but if you're not with World Wrestling, that means you don't have a figure.
Oh, baby, right? I was HARD when I got that message.
And you were just like, wait a minute, I think we aren't. So I'm sure everybody that's listening knows that if you wrestle with World Wrestling, you're automatically in their licensing program.
Yeah, no way.
You cannot do your own product. So the moment that you guys weren't, we were like, wait a minute, that means you're not under Mattel's master figure license.
Right.
And there was a 3-month window where it was like, where people weren't under contract.
Yeah.
So we jumped into that
for us.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Well,
I mean,
Brian, thank you. It took an hour and a half, but it flew by. You're such a great dude. Thank you for being so transparent. I think, you made people realize just these figures are so damn good. Don't judge it based off some stupid photos. Get these in your hands. They're amazing figures. I'm so proud to be included in this Ultimates line. I mean, I'm in the same line as the Ninja Turtles, Andre the Giant, Arnold, Mickey Mouse, Ren and Stimpy. I'm
exactly.
This is great.
We're gonna get, we'll have you and Lion-O face off.
Oh yeah.
By the way, a lot of people shouting out the Thundercats line in this chat. So
and
a lot of the major.
I know a lot of our fans are excited about the Thunder Tank too.
Oh, dude, the Thunder! It's right there. It's a beast. It's insane.
Well, can we see it? Can we see it? The size?
Oh baby.
Here, hold on.
I want to see the girth.
Shake the can.
Yeah.
It's.
Oh wow!
Oh my God.
That's cool, man.
Wow. You Thundercats fans.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got to do this. I'm glad you got to tell your side of the story, and I think the education and the insight to what a toy maker's life was pretty invaluable tonight. So thank you for that. It was a lot of fun.
I also want to say thank you first off to you guys for giving us a chance to start on this stuff with you guys, and that was a lot. It's been a lot of fun and really great, and it is one of those things like we were saying where I can just shoot you a text or whatever and ask you a question. Mm-hmm. It's very friendly, and that's really great. And then secondly, to people that are listening that bought them, thank you for taking, if you will, the risk. And hopefully you will enjoy the figures that you get, and you will think that they're awesome, because that's hopefully the goal for everybody. And I just, I say this with other things and whatever. It's like I'm in a very interesting spot where only a short time ago, I was in a similar position to you guys, where I'm sitting around with my friends going, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we made that? Wouldn't it be cool if we made that? And now I'm getting to be that guy. but I only get to be that guy as long as other people buy my toys. So
Yeah.
everybody that's buying my toys, thank you very much, so that I can get to make cool shit like this is my favorite. So make cool shit like this.
Yeah.
Because these are the things that I wanted to make that no one else was making. And the fact that I get to do it is not lost on me that it is a unique situation. Because there's really sort of like 3 or 4 really big companies that make stuff like this, and that's it. So,
Well, I mean,
name one guy from Series 3. You have to ask Yoko.
Oh, Yoko, come on, Yoko.
Yoko is once you called her out, she disappeared. I don't know if she's like.
She said she doesn't even. She
you're
said
right.
shoot. I don't know.
Because Yoko has a very detailed plan, and I am not going to mess up Yoko's plan. So if Yoko wants to mess up her plan, she can. This is the funny part. So if I'm the boss going, I don't want to make Yoko mad at me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is a little backwards, but
no. You hire people because they know what to do.
oh, Yoko.
Yo, what?
All right, guys. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah,
Brian, thank you so much for being a super cool dude.
that was awesome, man.
Make sure you pick up these figures. Still time to get them. Ringside Collectibles. I can't wait for Series 2 and Series 3.
Series 3 coming soon. First,
I love that.
got to get Wave 1 in your hands. Next month. Series 3.